So I've come to the recent, very dramatic and totally serious conclusion that being a Sonic fan is going to take 10 years off my life. And here is the full explanation why. So hello everyone, my name is RidersDX and welcome to this week's rendition of Riders Talk, where today I wanted an excuse to talk about, the kerfuffle, the explosion of Sonic news that was going on the past weekend, because I am a Sonic fan. Sonic was one of the very first franchises that really popped up for me on this channel. And there's a lot of reason to be really interested in this upcoming game for me in particular, and that is of course Sonic and Shadow Generations. And so before I answer the question as to why all these events that happened the past week resulted in me concluding that I am going to lose 10 years of my life because I'm a Sonic fan, let me kind of give a little context as to what I'm talking about. And so this past weekend, Sega held a panel at Anime Expo where they reminisced about Shadow the Hedgehog's history and also showed a preview of the new prologue animation that's going to be included with Sonic and Shadow Generations, Dark Beginnings. First of all, I have to get this out of the way. This is an absolutely gorgeous animation. Just from like the quick 30 seconds to minute that we saw, I am extremely excited to see the full result of this animation. I think that the use of 3D models in particular in this animation makes this scene so much more dramatic and so much more interesting, and I think it really suits the vibe of this animation as well, because a lot of animations in the past for other Sonic games didn't really require like the dramatics and the close-up shots and such that this one really is emphasizing and really focused on. And so I think that because of the tone and the obvious lore building of this animation in particular, this just seems like a great direction. And I mean, wow, I have no complaints at all. This looks absolutely amazing. I cannot wait to see the full result of it. But after seeing this panel, watching this preview, and taking a look at all the reactions and responses to this on the internet afterwards, I came to the conclusion that Sonic fans are psychotic. Yeah, they're absolutely just like in a constant state of psychosis. Nurse, they're on Twitter again. Retrieve the restraints, please. And so the whole claim that like Sonic fans are one of the most crazy and wild fan bases on the internet is absolutely not new at all. But there are some specific examples of very just like absolutely insane behavior over this panel that I just want to discuss over here. And so I think something that's been going on for a while but was also like re-emphasized during this panel is the whole fascination with Sonic fans on the death of Maria, which is like one of the close characters of Shadow the Hedgehog. We've had many moments on the timeline this year of people cheering about the fact that Maria's most significant and important contribution to the lore of Sonic the Hedgehog is that she gets shot at the Space Colony arc, which results in a ton of different events afterwards that result in the Shadow the Hedgehog that we know today. And so I just think it's very, very funny that fans have been clowning on the fact that Maria gets shot, and that we'll probably get to see that once again in the third Sonic movie. I mean, the actress for Maria in the Sonic 3 movie even posted this Instagram picture poking fun at it. Another example that I want to cite is when they posted this timeline on the panel. That was basically the purpose of this timeline was to help reminisce and go over the history of Shadow the Hedgehog very, very briefly and quickly. But there was a lack of Sonic 06 over here, and fans got really crazy and upset about that, because even though Sonic 06 is one of the most disastrous games of the franchise's history, there's a lot of lore to that, especially when it comes to Shadow the Hedgehog in particular, that people felt really needed to be examined and acknowledged here. And so that's another example of some of the weird behavior of the fan base. Another one that I found absolutely crazy, because I actually did not even realize that this was something that was said in the game, but there was this one fan that asked Takashi Iizuka a question at the panel about one of the most obscure lines in Sonic Adventure 2, but I suppose once I learned about the line, I can kind of understand the curiosity behind it. But this question had Iizuka literally have his hands in his face like this, and basically it was like a face palm of his entire existence. So I'm gonna just play the clip here because it's kind of difficult for me to explain otherwise.
This question is for Mr. Iizuka. During the battle against Final Hazard in Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow ponders out loud that Sonic might be the real ultimate life form. What made Shadow associate Sonic with this title near the end? And remember, Shadow gets amnesia almost right after this. So does he remember ever telling Sonic? Does Sonic remember?
Discovered what the ultimate life form is. It might be you. So yeah, in that scene, we have Super Sonic and Super Shadow both fighting to defeat the final hazard. And, in that moment, Shadow is kind of out of energy. He's falling to Earth. He feels defeated, but Super Sonic is not defeated. And so in that moment, he thinks, maybe Sonic is the ultimate life form, but in the end, he doesn't die. And so he changes his mind and says, actually, no.
Never mind, it's me again.
But there was one thing for me personally about this panel and this animation that really sparked the insane asylum complex that is residing inside me when it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog, and that is the fact that we got to see the return of this forgotten Jizoid from a forgotten spin-off on the Game Boy Advance that sent me over the fucking moon. Because this is Emerald, one of the most important, the major plot point character of Sonic Battle, a very underappreciated fighting game on the Game Boy Advance, and we desperately needed a sequel like 15 years ago. Like, honestly, this game is absolutely incredible. I really would love to see it at least remastered or brought back to current consoles in some sort of fashion. But anyway, I was really excited about this in particular because Emerald houses one of my favorite storylines of the entire Sonic franchise, and he is also very interconnected to Shadow the Hedgehog storyline, although it was mostly explored within Sonic Battle. To see that come back here at this much of a scale on a game that's basically going to be the face of Sonic the Hedgehog this year, alongside one of the biggest movies, probably the biggest movie of Sonic the Hedgehog's career. It's really crazy, and I'm just like, why am I so excited over something like this? In fact, this is the thing I wanted to really bring to attention here. Why are we as a fan base so excited over all these small details? Because you have to think about it. At this panel, not a single detail about the gameplay of Shadow Generations was reviewed here. All of this was simply lore building and storytelling, and yet you got to listen to a reaction that was as big as, I don't know, a Sonic Adventure 3 review, honestly. People care about this stuff almost as much, if not more, than the actual gameplay. And that is one of the craziest things I've really come to realize about Sonic the Hedgehog, is that people really do care about this stuff. So why do we have such responses like this? And why do I think this is all connected back to the fact that I think anyone that's a fan of Sonic is going to get 10 years off of their life? Okay, I just have to say that I don't actually mean that you're gonna lose 10 years off your life. I just think there was a funny line that I thought of in my head, but the more I keep saying it, the more ridiculous I feel like I sound. So I just want to make that clarification. Sonic fans are passionate, and they care way too much about a franchise that certainly burned us many times. I mean, unfortunately, Sonic has a history of being very inconsistent in terms of his output. So you have games like Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2 that really are heavy in the lore and have really solid gameplay too for the most part, but then you have the other direction of like games like Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations are very light in the lore, maybe still some solid gameplay, but then you have games like Sonic 06 and Shadow the Hedgehog that are like really heavy in the lore, but really terrible in the gameplay. It's just like, it's not consistent, you know? Every game gives you something very different and not in a good way. But I will say, why is it that I, as a Sonic fan, have stuck around for so long, especially when there's like other franchises such as Mario, just because it's the most immediate franchise I can think of, is far more consistent and far more rewarding as a fan, I feel like, that compared to Sonic. Why I still stuck around as a Sonic fan all this time and why I care so much about these sort of details, it's those sparks of greatness that reel us back in every single time, you know? Despite the fact that Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2 both have multiple gameplay styles that maybe aren't as great, that speed gameplay of the Sonic and Shadow levels are fantastic, and the lore building of Chaos and Shadow the Hedgehog and the Eclipse Cannon and all that stuff, that really reeled me in as a kid. And I look for that same euphoria, that same like excitement for those kind of storylines every single Sonic game that comes out, and I never get tired of looking and asking for it because it just felt so good at the time. Sonic is a franchise I've come to the conclusion that takes itself way too seriously. I mean, out of context, if you were to tell like a stranger what the plotline of Sonic Adventure 2 is, which involves a black anthropomorphic hedgehog wishing death upon an entire planet due to the wrongful death of his friend, is a little cuckoo, you gotta admit. Like, it just sounds like fan fiction, honestly. But there's just something to the sauce of Sonic the Hedgehog that really reels everyone in. My eyes are stapled to the screen. I'm sipping the Lazarus pit. I am seated for this stuff. this weird hybrid of colorful creatures and ridiculously dark and extensive plot lines just works for some reason. It's just something about Sonic the Hedgehog that he's able to get away with these like really outrageous and stupidly dark storylines that honestly a character like him really has no business of having. Like, think of Sonic's peers, Mario, Crash Bandicoot. None of those franchises have nearly the same amount of extensive dark storytelling as Sonic does, yet for some reason it just really works with Sonic. And so I don't know, it's just this mass appeal that despite the rocky road trip up to this point, I'm still a very strong and devout Sonic fan, and at this point it's not going to change. Sonic could have like 10 terrible games and I'm still going to be interested in the next one because I'm always going to be looking for that spark of greatness that I got when I was a kid. And well, that just sounds like a toxic relationship, let me tell you right now. But going back to my initial question, why does being a Sonic fan take 10 years off of your life? It can basically go both ways. Whether another crappy game comes out triggering the same old tired discourse over the pros and cons of each game, or in this specific case, the revival and expansion of historic Sonic franchise lore making everyone and their mom lose their shit. Either way, Sonic elevates my blood pressure, Sonic increases the cortisol in my brain, and Sonic distances me further from reality. All these things have happened ever since I became a Sonic fan, and I just think, you know what, this can't be good for our health. It can't be good for our health to get this riled up and this crazy over a blue hedgehog. It cannot be healthy. But Sonic is an all or nothing kind of series, and those foolish enough to indulge in it can look forward to all of that, whether you like it or not. I mean, I guess I'll happily die young for Sonic, but hopefully good diet and exercise prevents that. You know, I like to think I take care of myself. I like to think I live a healthy lifestyle. I like to think that I care about what goes in and out of my body. But nonetheless, Sonic the Hedgehog just has this way of like extrapolating the most intense and extremist responses out of people. And I just think that people's fascination with Shadow the Hedgehog as a character, his lore, especially with the return of Emerald in particular, like this is the kind of stuff that if Crash Bandicoot was doing this kind of stuff, would people really be as interested? Like, I have to be honest, if Mario was doing this kind of stuff, would people be as interested? I don't think so, because there's just something about Sonic the Hedgehog that makes you care about this. It's why Sonic has been able to get away with so many like failures and is still one of the most popular franchises today. Like, I don't know, it feels like a cult. It literally feels like a cult, and I feel trapped and I feel isolated and I feel like there's no way of getting out, but I'm happy to be here otherwise. And I don't know if this sounds coherent or if this makes any sense, but the overall conclusion I want to come to is that Emerald returning is super exciting for me, and it's way more exciting than I think it has any right to be. And you know what? That's just my truth. I think that Dark Beginnings looks to be one of my favorite pieces of Sonic media that's going to come out ever, and I'm just excited, man. I can't wait to see what it is. I can't wait to dissect it and like analyze it and talk about it with you all. And I'm just like, this is a good year for Sonic. This is a really good year for Shadow the Hedgehog in particular, and I'm excited. I can't wait to see what comes next. But anyway, that was a very confusing and long triad I want to go on today. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think about the panel? What did you think about the stuff I talked about? What did you think about the animation? And do you actually understand what I'm trying to say here? Just like, this felt kind of rushed. Maybe I'll try to revisit this again in a future video and actually try to make some sense of it. But all right, y'all, thank you so much. This is Riders, riding out.